Alright, hello! In this video I'm just going to be showing you how to make a mod for distance. This video is mainly directed towards the other distance modders, but if you're new to modding, this video could also serve as like a jumping off point on just how to make a mod yourself. And just give you an idea on how to get started. So I use Visual Studio 2019. You can use any version of Visual Studio. It doesn't really matter. In fact, I don't even think you really need to use Visual Studio, but this is just a good IDE to use for coding in C# because we're doing C#. All mods need to be written in C# programming language. And yeah, also you might have noticed that I'm not using a whole slideshow for this video. And I was going to do that, but I decided not to. So let's just get into it. So first thing you're going to need to do, you create a new project. Make sure it is a class library .NET framework project because that's what we're doing. That's what we're making. And I have it in my recent project templates, but you should be able to find it in here if you're using Visual Studio. Which, by the way, just also mentioning that this video is assuming that you know how to do programming. Obviously, since I'm kind of just hopping straight into it. So if you have no idea what's going on, I'm sorry. I'll be answering questions about things inside of the comments of this video. And you can also ask things inside of the modding channel in the Distance Discord. There are several other people who would be willing to help you out if you're trying to get started with modding and you're completely new to the experience. There are people there who can help you, including me. So yeah, let me get back to it. So once you select that, you want to make that, you want to make a class library.NET Framework project. Make sure that you're using .NET Framework 3.5. 3.5 is the, Distance is an old game, so it uses a pretty old .NET Framework version. And yeah, your mod is not going to work if you use any other framework. So use .NET Framework 3.5 for your project. And I would click create, but I have an old mod that I made that I'm going to use as an example in this video because it already has everything set up, so I'm going to be able to show you everything that you need to know from there. So let me just go to that right now. So this mod, this Visual Studio project is my randomized car mod. It's a really, really simple mod. That's why I'm going to be using this as a means of showing you an example on what a BepInEx mod even looks like, because we're not using Centrifuge anymore. We're using BepInEx. It's pretty simple. So first thing you're going to need to do, make sure that you have allow unsafe code checked. This is a mod, so it has unsafe code. So make sure this is toggled on. Make sure it has a check mark. And also another thing you're going to need to do is that you're going to need to make sure you have Zero Harmony, Assembly C#, BepInEx, and Unity engine referenced for this project. And you might be wondering, well, where do I get these? Where do I get these references? So I'll show you where to get Zero Harmony and BepInEx. So I'm assuming that you already know how to mod distance. You already have Thunderstore or R2 Modman. And you might have opened distance modded before. I'm assuming this. Assuming you know how to do that. And so if you have done that, all you're going to need to do is go to your local BepInEx install. So if you're using Thunderstore, you have a profile that you probably set up, and you have BepInEx installed in that profile. You're just going to have to browse your profile folder. And inside of there, you just go inside the BepInEx folder, and then you go inside the core folder. And inside the core folder is where all of the DLLs for this are. And the only ones that you'll need to reference is the Zero Harmony one and the BepInEx folder. That's all you need from here. All of the other DLLs, you don't need to pay attention to any of that. You just need these two. And for the other two, you're going to need to go to your local distance install. So that's like, opening Steam and then selecting distance, and then, you're browsing the local files for distance from there. And from there, you should see a folder similar to this. I have some extra folders in here that are for other things, but The fact of the matter is, you need to go inside of. I also have like a local BepInEx inside of here as well because I installed BepInEx manually a while ago. But anyway, you need to go inside of your distance data folder and then go inside of managed. Inside of managed, you're going to find all of the DLL files that the game uses, and the one that you'll need is assembly C# and Unity Engine. The reason why you can't just use any old Unity Engine DLL is because distance is on Unity Engine 5.6, which is a pretty old Unity version at this point, and you want to make sure that you have the correct Unity DLL version reference whenever you're making your mod. So you need to reference this one, it needs to reference the assembly C#, which is essentially the game's code is inside of assembly C#. There's also like a ton of other DLLs here. You don't need to reference them, but if you were like making a graphics mod where you're trying to change like how bloom looks or stylized outlines looks, that all that like graphics and visuals related code, like shader code, I'm pretty sure is in here too. That's inside of assembly C# first pass. And if you're doing like a mod with custom music, then you might want to reference an audio because you need to, I don't know, you need to patch something inside of an audio. That's what all these DLL files are. Because the patches that you're writing in your mod are going to be patching the code inside of these DLL files. So that's where you find them. So yeah, let's get back into the mod. So when you're making a mod for BepInEx, you need to be able to communicate to BepInEx what your mod even is. So that's what these three lines are up here. This is the GUID and the name of the mod and the version of the mod. You need to follow this format, by the way, for the version. It's number.number.number. If you don't follow that format, you're probably going to run into some kind of error, so make sure you're following this format for your version number. And also in the GUID, you can't have any spaces, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so this is all within the plugin CS file, by the way. This is essentially the mod's entry point. So you're going to obviously need this file. You don't need to name it plugin, but I name it plugin because that's essentially what this is. This is the plugin part of the mod. And up here, this is communicating to BepInEx what your mod is. You need to have this, need to have these lines in the code, so BepInEx knows what your mod is. And then if your mod is going to have any kind of settings or like some kind of options for the player to control, then you're going to be having lines that look like this. So the randomized car mod has 3 separate settings. You can toggle whether or not you can toggle whether or not it's even randomizing the cars. You can toggle whether or not it will randomize the colors for the cars, and you can toggle whether or not custom cars are included in the randomization. So these strings up here, these 3 static strings, these are just the names of those settings. And then these config, like everything under config entries, this is the BepInEx code that I'm using, is like BepInEx API. So for every little option or setting that you want to make, that is a config entry, and you can set it to pretty much any type you want within certain restrictions. And these are all just booleans because you toggle whether or not they're on or off. So these are all booleans. So yeah, this is me making those making those entries there, and these are the names. These are the names of those settings. And I'm going to go past these 3 lines because I'm going to explain the awake function. So your mod is going to be a Unity game object. And the first thing that, the first code that runs for a Unity game object is everything inside of the awake function. The awake function is that's the first thing that it runs the moment your mod gets created. Like the moment the game object gets created, it's going to run the awake function. And so the first thing I do is that I reference the instance of the mod right here in case I need to like change something. Like if I had some public variables that I needed to change, I don't have any for this mod, but if I did, I would want to have a reference to the instance of that game object, and then I also kind of I start the logger right here. I create the logger because BepInEx has a manual log source that I made up here, and this is me creating that log source. Then I also immediately do a little log saying thanks for using randomized car. This is so that line is just there so I know that the mod has started. Like I know that this awake function has even ran, and because sometimes there might be an error before it even starts. So if this message is in the debug log, then I know that the mod has at least started. And then this right here, this is setting up the metadata for all of the settings that this mod has. And you're going to need to do this because this is how Thunderstore and R2 Modman, this is how it knows to display the different settings for your mod inside of that mod manager. And this is also how the distance mod configuration mod, it's weird to say that out loud. That mod looks at the different settings that all the other mods are loading, and it creates a menu in game to display the settings of those mods. And you're going to want this metadata to be set correctly, because then the distance mod configuration manager will be able to properly see that in game, or properly display that in game. So I'll go over what the different parameters are whenever you do this config setup. So the first parameter is setting the category. This is setting the name of the category for that particular setting. So if your mod has a lot of settings, you might want to categorize what those different settings are. I just have general as the string because this is just a general setting. I don't really need to section off the settings into different sections because there's only 3 of them, and they're all just general things. So the first parameter I just write general, unless I need to like specify it even more deeply. Again, this only really matters for displaying it inside of like R2 Modman or the Thunderstore. And then from there, this parameter is the name of your setting. So this is the static strings that I had at the top here. This is the name of the setting. So, and then the next parameter is the default value. For all of these settings, I have the default value as false. So this is making it so like when the mod starts, it's not going to automatically just randomize the cars immediately. It's going to wait for the player to set this to true. So then it'll start randomizing the cars, because you might not want to randomize your car immediately, because that'll change your garage settings and whatnot like the moment it starts. And you might not want that, so that's why it's set to false by default. And then I do the same thing for the other remaining settings. Oh wait, I forgot. Fourth parameter is setting the description for that setting. So I write toggle whether or not cars randomize, because that's what the setting is doing. It's toggling whether or not you're randomizing cars. And again, you want to do this config setup inside of the awake function, because if you don't, your settings aren't going to display anywhere. It's not going to be inside of the mod manager, and it's not going to display in game for the mod configuration manager. Oops, didn't mean to do that. All right, so the next 3 lines here. So every config entry has an event called setting changed, and if you want, you can have a function, listening to that event. This function is literally doing nothing right now, but in case I did want something to happen, like if I wanted something to happen whenever randomized cars was set to true, this is what this is doing right here. If I wanted something to happen then I could do that right here. If you have, some settings where the moment they're changed, you want something to happen, or like you need something to be done there, then you can do that. I'm actually going to get rid of this line because I don't actually want it there. All right. And next, I'm going to show you what a patch looks like. So you might have noticed on the right side that I have this patches folder, and you might think that this setup is a little weird, but I have it set up like this because I have this folder structure set up like this because it lets me know at a glance exactly what I'm patching. So I am patching. So the function that I am patching is located within the assembly C# DLL, the one that I reference right here. The function is located inside of that, and that function is contained within the application X class, and that function is called load level. That's why the CS file is called load level. That's why I have it set up like that. You don't have to set up your patches like that necessarily, but that's just the way I do it because it's just a nice way to organize the code, because there's some other mods that I've written that have a ton of patches, and that folder structure just kind of helps me know where everything is immediately. Because you might not want to write all of your patches in one file, and then you just have this giant file to navigate. But randomized car is extremely simple. It's a very small mod. There's only one patch that I ever wrote. And this is using Harmony's, the Harmony library. So, the first line up here, this is essentially also what this folder structure was saying, that I am patching the application X class, and the function that I'm patching is load level, which is written as a string. You don't have to write it as a string, but I write it as a string. Which, by the way, I'm going to have all of the documentation for like Harmony and for BepInEx. I'm going to have that inside of the description for you to be able to find and look at. If you need like easy access to finding the documentation, this video will have all of the resources in the description. Because a lot of what I'm saying is probably not going to make complete sense. But you can also just look at a documentation to reference exactly what you need, whatever you need. So, okay, I already went over the first line up here, and then this is the class that I'm making, static class, and then Harmony prefix. So I want my code, this is like my code down here, I want my code to run before the load level function is called from the game. Like before distance runs the load level function, I want my code to run first, and that's what Harmony prefix is saying. If I wanted my code to run after, then I would write postfix instead of prefix, because postfix would mean that my code runs after load level function, after the load level function. Again, that's not what I want here, so I have prefix, but that's what this line even means. And this is just all my own personal code that runs like before the load level function runs. This void function will run before load level runs, if that makes any sense. That's essentially what patches look like. Again, the documentation is going to be available in the description. And again, if you have any questions on like how to write patches, I'll try to answer that in the comments, or you can ask those questions in the modding channel in the Distance Discord, because there's other helpful people there other than me. I'm not the only modder in Distance, even if I'm the most active one right now. I'm not the only one. And yeah, that's about it. So let me go over what you'll need to know to like upload your mod to the Thunderstore. So once you make a build, like once you build, you make one, you're going to find that build. Wow. You're going to be able to find that build inside of like I don't know if I just go at bin and then debug. This DLL file right here, that's your mod. That is your mod right there. My Visual Studio project has like nothing else set up in it right now, so it just puts the build inside of debug. This is a very basic project. But anyway, this is your mod. This DLL file is your mod. And if you want to upload that to the Thunderstore, here's what you're going to need to do. So the Thunderstore website already has a like documentation. I'm also going to have a link to this in the description. But yeah, it already has documentation on what you need to do in order to upload your mod to the Thunderstore. So besides the DLL file, you're also going to need an icon.png, you're going to need a readme.md, and you're going to need a manifest.json. So yeah, as the website says, you're going to, the PNG image is going to, it has to be 256 by 256. And the README is going to be rendered on the packages page. Like, all this is explained on the Thunderstore website. If your mod is on GitHub, you could just steal the README MD from the GitHub page and then just slap it onto Thunderstore. You just do that. But the manifest JSON is the important part. So this is, they show you an example of what that looks like down here. So, you know, you have the name, which is, this would be the name of your mod, which there can't be any spaces, by the way. If you want spaces, you need to have underscore instead of spaces. Again, this is explained in the on the website. But then you need the version number, which the version number should be the same version number that's, you know, in the mod. Like, you know, it should be the same number. Make sure that's the same number when you upload it. And then you need a website URL. You don't need to have a website. You can have this, you could make this an empty string, like just make it 2 quotation marks if you don't actually have a website. But what you should be putting for the website URL is like the GitHub link to that mod, because you probably have this on GitHub as well, right? You should have this on GitHub. And then, you know, a description for the mod, 250 characters max, and then the dependencies. So there is one dependency that you'll have to write down, because, you know, we're using BepInEx, and that dependency, let me just show you right here, is this one. This BepInEx pack, you're going to have to put this one as a dependency, because this is the mod loader that we're using. We're using BepInEx. So yeah, make sure to reference BepInEx, like the specific version of BepInEx that we use right here. You're going to have to put that as your dependency. And then you just zip that all up with your mod and upload it to the Thunderstore. And then your mod will be on the Thunderstore. It's pretty nifty, pretty cool. And yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know to make a mod for Distance and also upload it to the. Again, I know this video is assuming a lot of knowledge. Like, it assumes you know things about you know, I assume that you know things about Visual Studio. I assume that you know things about C# programming. So again, this is probably very confusing for anybody who is not a modder or has never done any C# programming. So again, I'll answer questions in the description of this video. Not description. I'll answer questions in the comments of this video, and I'll also be answering any other questions that you might have. This video is mainly directed towards, you know, the other Distance modders, and also just people who might want to jump into modding and just need an idea on how to get started. This is what this video is. Again, I'm gonna have all the resources that I look at when I'm making a mod in the description. I'm gonna have the documentation for BepInEx. I'm gonna have the documentation for Harmony library. I'm gonna have the documentation for Unity Engine 5.6. I'm gonna have the Thunderstore, like this website page. I'm gonna have that linked in the description as well. All the resources are going to be in the description. And another thing that I did not go over in this video, it's pretty important, but I didn't go over in this video, is dnspy and .peak. So if you want to actually look at the game's code, because you might be wondering, like, how do I know to patch load level inside of application X? How do I know that, Tribo? I'm not going to really go over it in this video, but if you want to look at the game's code, you need to use a decompiler. And you can either use a decompiler that's named, I'm just going to type it right here, but I'm also going to have links to this in the description. There's a decompiler called .peak that you can use to look at the game's code. You essentially would just need to open up assembly C# inside of that decompiler. Or you could use dnspy-x. You can also use that decompiler as well. Again, I'll have links in the description for this stuff. That part is a pretty important part of modding, but I just didn't want to go over it in this video because that was just not within the scope. I didn't want to talk for that long. I didn't want the videos to be that long, but I'm going to have links to that stuff inside of the description of this video. And yeah, I think that just about covers it. I don't want to repeat myself too much because yeah, I understand that this video is assuming the viewer has a lot of knowledge, and you might not have that knowledge. But that's okay. I just wanted to give people a little bit of like a jumping off point to work with. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully this is helpful. I don't know if it will be, but I hope it is.